technology and all those terminologies is not my forte.
Not a problem. Not a problem.
Благослови моих братьев, благослови наши руки. Мы в поисках больших денег, мы в деле круглые сутки. Благослови
Baked Out Radio Show, man, they everywhere.
Благослови моих братьев.
All right, y'all. We're tuning in for another episode of Baked Out Radio Show. I am your host, Childress, and we have another guest coming via Zoom. And for everyone out there who will be listening to the podcast as well, you can always go back and check the visual out on Facebook, YouTube, and any other platform that I put it on where you can see visually. But we have Mr. Brian Childress, who is a fractional CTO. And Brian, I just want to let you know, full disclosure, technology and all those terminologies is not my forte.
Not a problem. Not a problem.
So I did want to get into, I was sitting there researching a little bit. Can you explain to me a little bit, what's the difference between a fractional CTO and a regular, that's the chief technology officer, right?
That is correct. Yep.
So
a fractional CTO brings the same level of experience, expertise, connections in the industry to an organization just for a fraction of time, so a part-time. So the key differentiator here is that you're bringing in that same level of expertise, but it's at a lower cost point because you don't have someone there necessarily full-time. And for a lot of organizations, that makes a lot more sense because they really don't have a need for someone to be full-time, hands-on in that CTO role. So this really works well for smaller organizations, startups, places that may not have technology as a core tenet of their growing organization. And they need somebody to kind of steer the ship in the right direction. So they want the expertise, but maybe not the same cost.
No, I definitely understand that. I was sitting there looking at different stats for a business and ran across a Forbes database. There was a graphic that was put together where it said there was 27 million small businesses, and it was just the owner. And then the ones that had 1 to maybe 10 employees was a smaller fraction, and then the ones that had over 10 employees was even smaller. So I can imagine, that fits well with, I guess, the person of your expertise and stuff. And does it also does it keep it interesting for you as well, because you get to bounce from one thing to the next?
For me, it really does. I get to work with a number of different projects, industries, teams. And for me, I'm really good at solving problems, just kind of based on a little bit of context. I can really bring a solid solution to the table. And it allows me to continue to do that across a number of different teams. And I tend to focus across different verticals or industries. So that keeps it interesting as well, because I get to learn healthcare and education and finance and taxes. And so there's a constant opportunity to learn.
Have you ran across an organization where it's based in, I guess, physical goods and products and selling, and they needed, somebody with your expertise to help them on the technology side to scale that or to fix issues that came abroad?
I've done some projects in the past, specifically around logistics, snack foods. I got to learn that industry a little bit, and what does it take to get snack foods to our local 7-Eleven, for instance. But no, I tend to focus more on software solutions. So typically business to business software. It's either, maybe a SaaS platform, a software as a service, or something that a company is using internally for their own needs.
So I was going through reading your profile, and I love the fact that, first of all, I've been enjoying this pod match. And I love the fact the guest gets to put questions and stuff like that, because it really helps when it comes to the research. And I thought a few things stuck out, questions that you're ready to answer, right? All right. One, let's go with, AI is this new thing that, it's just a lot of people are, for it. Some people are against it. I guess, people are not knowing how to use it. I was talking to another business friend of mine the other day, and she was showing me where she used the app and she was writing scripts for her business to bring people in for she does like body contouring and things of that nature, and it just wrote this magnificent script that I thought was pretty good. So, how do you see AI changing, like the startup landscape in the next 5 years?
I think it's going to be incredible. I don't know if we can even fathom the level of change, the pace of innovation that's going to be empowered just by AI and the availability that we have to it. I think it's really, really an interesting space. We've heard it compared to the advent of the internet or mobile devices. And I think it's going to have a similar, maybe slightly even higher level of impact on how we work and live in our daily lives. I think there's certainly concerns around just the sheer power that AI can bring. But if we look at the positive, I think there's a lot of ways that we can leverage AI in our day-to-day work to just increase the amount that we're able to produce, the quality that we're able to produce, and the amount of impact that we can positively have on our customers and even our own day-to-day lives.
Do you see where AI is not applicable in any particular industries, or do you think AI can go across all industries?
I think it can go across all industries. Some may need to kind of shift the way they operate, but yeah, it's a train that's not going to slow down. It's certainly going to impact an industry in every industry, I think.
Okay. So in working with you work with a lot of startups. So are these like traditional startups where, very low capital, they're bootstrapping their business, or are these startups where, it's some type of funding being raised, like, I don't know, 500,000 and above?
A bit of a mix. Typically, a lot of the startups that I'm working with have raised some amount of capital. So typically maybe an angel or a pre-seed round, usually somewhere in the 500,000 to a couple $1 million they've got in capital available. But it can certainly vary. Most of the companies that I work with may not be towards that, large venture capital type funding round. I've been an employee in some of those organizations, but no, most of the clients that I work with are going to be typically kind of pre-seed on up.
And notice that you said that you work with a lot of non-technical founders, right? So with doing that, how are you able to bridge the gap that's there? Because like somebody for myself, I'm not technical in that aspect. Now I do understand, having a CTO and all that and being able to use that to help scale. But like, how do you really bridge that gap and get them to understand, because sometimes people who are non-technical and just business, they just stick with what they know, and that's their comfort level. Are you able to bridge that gap and, show them the value of what you're bringing?
I think for me, my job is to understand the business. I understand technology at very, very deep levels, but my role in helping, a startup or a founder is to really understand the business, and everything that I do and the ways that I think about, short-term and long-term technology strategy always ties back to the business. So I kind of use that business as the shared knowledge and understanding. And then I can, layer on clever analogies to help someone that may not have the same technical background understand some of the things that we're talking about, or the ways that the decisions we're going to make, what impact that's going to have on the business. And that may be an area that I kind of differentiate myself from a lot of other technologists. Like I love technology, right? I eat, sleep, and breathe it. But I understand that that's only a tool that we use to solve business problems. So I have to make sure that I'm always focusing on providing good value to the business. And so that tends to be where I really focus in on. And then, if I'm talking to someone who is technical or is interested in technology, then we can nerd out on the deep technical.
Do you get that? Do you get that happen? Does it happen often for you, or enough for you, to where you meet someone where you can speak, saying the lingo and the language?
Yeah, it does. I'll run across people that used to being coders, they used to be programmers, and then, maybe they moved into management or just into a totally different job family. But they still have that excitement about solving those problems and building things. It's just a very interesting space.
So I was sitting there listening to, like I said, a couple of the interviews you've done, and kept hearing, you know what I'm saying, solution based type of approach, right? You're defining the problem and then you're building a solution. So just in, like, generalities, when someone brings you aboard to help with the problem that they have, what's a typical time frame that you would spend with them? Is it like a few months? Is it like 6 months? Could it be a year?
I've got to give you the "it depends" answer.
Yeah.
It really can depend on what it is, they're looking to solve. So most of my engagements are a few months, upwards of, maybe a couple years. So it really does depend on the business, their goals, and their specific needs. If it's a very technology focused business and they're looking to grow and bring on technologists, more developers, my goal is to actually work myself out of a job in that organization. It's to get the team in a great place with processes and documentation and best practices, so that then I can help to hire my replacement, right? And usually that may be a full-time CTO or a VP of engineering or something along those lines. Other organizations may not have that same need. They just need somebody kind of at the helm on the technology side, but because that's maybe not core component of their business, they may not need somebody in that full-time capacity. And that's where they're able to bring someone in with, a high level of expertise, but again, at a lower cost. So it really does depend, and it depends on the project as well.
So I imagine, your business model is that you're freelancing your services, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
What made you want to actually do that as opposed to, like, just securing? Because, with your vast knowledge now, that I'm sure you could have secured whatever type of job that you wanted for an organization. So what made you want to go that route?
I really like working across a number of different projects, technologies, teams. And I found in working, at an organization, you don't have that same level of variety. So I really like being able to help a lot of different groups. And again, a lot of that kind of just satiates my own desire to, be learning new things and new industries and just getting in depth, because I think naturally a very curious person. And so it's kind of an opportunity for me to tap into that.
So in doing that journey, how long have you been freelancing?
So I think I've been freelancing probably 12 years.
Okay.
Typically a lot of that's been moonlighting on the side of full-time jobs. But yeah, I've been moonlighting either full-time or part-time for quite a while.
So when you first started, did you get the I guess the response that you wanted, or was there anything that you learned along the way that you necessarily didn't know before you started?
I've learned a lot of things. I think I learned more today than I did, in those early years. What I've come to really understand is that technology is the easiest part of what we do, right? And that's easy for me to say as a technologist, but technology is largely, it's fairly prescriptive. There's several ways that we can solve a problem, but I've got a lot of examples that I can kind of lean on, right? I can look at other companies. I've got a lot of colleagues I can kind of ask questions of. The challenge, and I think many of us face this in our day-to-day work and lives, is communicating with other humans and understanding where someone's coming from, the challenges that they have, the business and what problems it's trying to solve for its customers. That's the challenging piece. So that's really why I like to focus there when I'm working with my clients, to understand what is it that they're trying to do. And then technology just turns out to be a tool that we can potentially use. So once we understand the problem that we're solving, the rest becomes easier, and of course that's in relative terms.
So do you consider yourself an entrepreneur, or?
I guess so. I don't know. I've always struggled with that term, but yeah, I do. I like exploring new areas and kind of chasing that curiosity. And it turns out that people pay me for some of that too. So,
That's the fun part, huh?
yeah, just a added benefit, if you will.
Yeah. So, a lot of people, they look overseas and things for like, developers. So I have the, Bake That Radio Show, which is my podcast platform, but it's more than just that. I have the website and I have an app. So I have a web developer, who's here in Macon where I'm located, and he developed an app for me. We have it on like the Apple Store, in the Google Store, and all that, all these fees and all that stuff. And he writes all this code. So I'm somewhat familiar, with the process, because just in talking to him, there's a lot of code written for apps, and I didn't realize that. Lines and lines and lines of code. But what I'm getting at is one of the questions, ready to ask, what are the risks with hiring an offshore developer? And I think sometimes as business people, we're looking at our finite amount of capital and we're trying to apply it the best way. And a lot of people go offshore with that. I love the fact that I can have someone I can pick up the phone and talk to, or go run to his office to solve something. So in your opinion, and a professional opinion, what are the risks of hiring, offshore developers?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very, very common practice, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it. We just have to be a lot more cautious. And whether it's the person down the street that you can go to their office or someone overseas, I think there's a lot of things that we need to do in both scenarios. Really, at the end of the day, for a business owner who's asking a freelancer or a development agency to build something for them, it's important for the business owner to understand what's being built, to see progress along the way, and most importantly, I think, is to maintain ownership through the entire process. And we see this a lot with, potentially non-technical founders and business owners who are saying, hey, I want an app. I want this thing built, but I don't know how to do it myself, so I'm going to go and hire someone. And what they do a lot of times, unfortunately, is they kind of relinquish all control over to that person, and they put all of the trust and ultimately all of their business in the hands of that person. And if that person is overseas, then it's a hard, pretty much impossible, if something were to happen, to regain control, if you will. And so that's, unfortunately, it keeps me fairly busy because I work with a lot of customers and clients to help regain control of some of those processes. This can be the source code that's being written. It may be housed and only accessible to whomever they hired, wherever they are in the world, where their applications are hosted. They can relinquish all of the control for that. All of the intellectual property can be relinquished. So there's a lot of protections that we kind of have to put in place as a business owner to make sure that our business can ultimately continue to operate if we continue to work with that freelancer or the development agency or not. And so there's a lot that we kind of have to be aware of before we start actually writing code. Again, like writing code is one of the last things that we kind of do. If I have my preferences. So
I get the sense that you're the type of individual, when you're working on a job, that you include ethics in that decision making. And what I mean by that is like what you just described, where, like, say if someone were to give you all of this trust with their business and you're doing an app for them, you would set up parameters where you would inform them like, hey, yes, I understand what you're doing, but this is what you need to know, and this is how you need to log in and stuff like that, instead of them just like, giving you the keys to the kingdom. Is that a correct assessment?
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's a lot of what I do, is making sure that I hold on to the keys, and then I just kind of figure out which doors you're able to access as the developer or the development agency. Yeah.
Okay. So I love the fact that you put these two questions on here. The one is what held your career back, and the other one is what has helped you succeed in your career. Um, let's get into that. So, what do you feel held your career back?
Um, if it's all right with you, I kind of want to give the same answer for both of those questions.
Oh, that's fine.
Uh, so imposter syndrome, I think, has held me
Uh,
back quite a bit. So I wasn't the kid that was programming on the family computer when I was 8 years old. That
mhm.
wasn't me. I didn't get into technology and computers until I was in graduate school. And that's where I
Okay.
really, really dove in and found a lot of excitement around technology and software engineering. And so I think coming into the industry, not having that same background that a lot of my peers did, gave
Mhm.
me a lot of imposter syndrome. And I think that
Mhm.
I held myself back in my career because of that. And when I recognized that, kind of to your second question there, I decided to push through that. I understood that there was some discomfort there, but I decided to push through that.
Mhm.
One of the ways that I've done that is to not only address my just kind of imposter syndrome around being in software engineering, but maybe not having the same background as others, and then also my kind of fear of things like public speaking. And so I
Mhm.
decided to push through that fear and pursue speaking at conferences and meetups and
Mhm.
that sort of thing. And I just kind of said, well, the heck with it, and went and submitted some proposals and got accepted to speak at some conferences and kind of pushed through that discomfort.
Mhm.
And from that, I think it's one of the most exciting things in my career is what's happened on the other side of that discomfort.
Mhm.
I've had the opportunity to travel nationally and internationally, even with
Mhm.
my family, to go speak at conferences and meet folks. I've been issued a couple U.S. patents for some software designs.
Okay.
I've been able to speak with folks like you on
Mhm.
podcasts and
Mhm.
webinars and that sort of thing. And so that's really propelled me forward. But I had to face and then kind of push through that
Mhm.
discomfort of ultimately imposter syndrome or just lack of
Yeah.
confidence in some areas. So
So have you experienced where you've inspired others to do the same and to follow, what I'm saying, like their dreams and hopes? Has that information like came back to you or anyone come up to you like, hey, I've seen your journey or I know about your journey because I'm inside of your network. You really inspired me to go out and face my fears.
yeah, I think there's quite a few folks that have kind of come up and given a message along those lines to me. And for me, that's why I love doing what I do. It's why I really try and pursue opportunities to mentor other developers or
Mm-hmm.
startup founders or anything along those lines, is a way
Mm-hmm.
to kind of show hey, I was dealing with these things. This is what I did. These are the things that I felt and the thoughts that I had during that period of time. And
Mm-hmm.
then this is what kind of came out of that process. And just being able to share some of that
Mm-hmm.
journey has helped folks.
So you're in, developers space, technology and all that. Do you see like in your area or within the United States, are people going into those areas even more, or has the interest in those areas dwindled down?
I think the interest is continuing to spike. Maybe there's a little bit of tapering off, but things like coding boot camps, we saw a
Mm-hmm.
huge uptick in those, maybe 8 or 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
We're continuing to see some where folks are coming from another career field. They're going into an intensive training program and then hoping to come out as a junior developer and then kind of work their way through the ranks. I
Mm-hmm.
think we're continuing to see that, especially as companies are removing requirements of having things like a 4-year college degree in
Mm-hmm.
computer science to be able to get into the field. So I think there's
Mm-hmm.
still a lot of opportunity there. I mean, it depends on which statistic you read, but there's still
Mm-hmm.
going to be a continued demand, even with AI in all of its power, we're still going to need strong software engineers. And I think where I see the biggest gap now in the industry is we need senior engineers, those folks that have 10 or more years of industry experience coming in and working in organizations. I think that's where I see the biggest gap. We have a lot of folks coming in that have a few years of experience, but we don't have as many with those 10 plus years of experience.
So do you think is it the industries that are like pushing them out or burning them out or not seeing the value in what they bring? That's why people don't hit that 10-year mark, or what do you think reason for the gap?
All of the above. I think
Okay.
there's quite a few reasons. Once you hit kind of certain levels within software engineering, depending on the company, there may not be a lot more growth for you. And so a lot of folks will go from an individual contributor role into management and kind of get away from the code and then continue to climb through the ranks on a management track. And for some that works well. For others, it feels like they're forced into it because they don't have a lot of growth opportunity on the individual contributor track. Now we are seeing a shift in the industry where there are more levels that folks can aspire to as individual contributors. And I do think that will help keep folks in the industry. But yeah, I mean, burnout is a real thing because it's an industry. We're constantly learning, right? It moves so quickly. And in order for us to kind of keep pace with the demands of the business and keep ourselves employable, and we have to continually retool much more often than some other industries do.
I look at that and I like ask a physiological question. Is it really necessary to advance with technology as it, as quick as it's going? Because it based to other industries, some industries are like just great at having like these milestone markers, like every 10 years there's something new that shakes up the industry and pushes it forward. But it seems like technology keeps moving, and the evolution of it is going rapidly fast. Is it really necessary, do you think? Or
I think some of it, yes. It continues to blow me away the amount of work that I can do from my cell phone from anywhere in the world. Just the ability to do things, just take care of life. And I think those demands or expectations, more and more people are just kind of glomming onto. And so in order to support that, technology continues to need to progress. And so, I think to a large degree, it's just kind of how, where the world is and how we're continuing to grow. From an industry perspective, I think it is very cyclical, right? And I've been fortunate to have been around long enough that I'm seeing, those cycles kind of come back around, and the things that we did in the 50s, we did again in the 60s. They just had a different name, maybe happened a little bit faster. And we're continuing to see a lot of those same cycles and patterns happening. It's a lot quicker that it happens these days. So.
Okay. See here. Where's okay. So medium-sized small business that, has the capital and they need to hire a freelancer or a consultant or an agency. Which one should they go with, in your opinion, or what should they consider when hiring or picking between?
I recommend hiring a technical advisor or an expert first.
Okay.
That's someone that can come in, will understand the business, what it is that they're trying to do, and then can make recommendations based on that. I'm going to paint with a very broad brush, but this is typically how I see that play out. If someone in a business that has capital and is looking to build software just says, hey, I want to go and hire a development agency, right? We need to build something, so let's start building. Let's just hit the ground running. The way that typically plays out is the development agency is eager to have that work. So they're going to say, yeah, we can do everything, and we need to build all of these custom things, and it's going to take a lot of money and a long time, but this is what you need. Because for the development agency, their goal is billable hours and to make money. Their goal isn't necessarily always to serve your business and making sure that you're solving the right problems in the right way. So that's why I like to recommend bringing in just a technical advisor whose goal is to understand the business and come up with a technology strategy, and then can potentially make recommendations or help you in reviewing freelancer or a development agency to hire. Because unfortunately, a lot of times what we see is if we hire a development agency, they're going to build a big custom solution where ultimately what we needed to solve the problem was a very, very simple solution. Sometimes it's free. Sometimes it didn't require any development resources at all. But because we went to the person that only builds, then that's what we're going to get, is something that's built. And that's where we see a lot of frustration from business owners who have gone down that route.
I definitely understand that. And like you said, they're trying to, build or whatever, and that's what they're accustomed to doing. So of course they would build, and that's how they would present the solution to them. It seems like, I tell people all the time, when you're doing a certain magnitude of business and volume, then all your decisions have to be more strategic and thought out. You can't like make all these emotional based decisions. You can't just because you have a problem, you can't just throw something at it just to say that, try to solve the problem. Rather, you solve the problem the right way and, go through the process. Like you said, bring in a technology advisor, and they can do an assessment within 2 weeks or whatever the case may be, give you recommendations, and then bring them back on to help even go through that process. So I like one of your ideas for the episode title is a main focus of simple software always wins. Can you put that into perspective for us as far as what would be like a simple software and it would be solving, the solution, instead of someone thinking that a complex software would need to be applied?
I think the most common examples that come to mind, we need to collect some sort of data from either an internal department and be able to transfer that to another department. It's likely we already have some of those tools already in our ecosystem. So let's say we have Google Workspace in our organization, and we have access to Google Sheets and Google Forms. Those tools can do a lot for us in simple data collection and transmitting that information. Typically that, because it's a small internal use case, we don't have a need for custom software to be built or to bring in a super robust software as a service platform. We can do it with the tools that we have. So a lot of times I think there's just opportunity to say, okay, what is the problem? And then we start to look at the solutions. For technologists, and myself included, right? This is a big reason that I've continued to stay in the industry is I'd like to explore new things and play with new shiny tools and build, right? I just like to create things. And that's the same for many of my colleagues. The challenge there is that if we only take a building mentality, then, what's the saying that if you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail? That's when we just get into that pattern. And, when we start to look at what we're building and how we're solving the problem versus say like a Google or a Netflix, right? They're solving really interesting problems in very interesting ways. They also have a ton more customers and a ton more, just different challenges that, our small internal team doesn't have. But we see a lot of very complex software come out of that as a byproduct, because as technologists, we're excited to explore some of those things. And we just happen to be using our organization's budget and time to build out and play with some of those things. So I always focus on what is the simplest solution, because technology and software, it's going to become complex on its own. That's the nature of it. So let's not make it overly complex to start. It's kind of where that comes from.
I love it. So you said you've done speaking engagements and things of that nature. Do you have anything else planned for the rest of the year, or do you reset in this time of year and start, focus on new goals for for next year?
So I've got at least one in-person conference this year scheduled out, a number of different podcasts and webinars scheduled out. So I have quite a bit more this year. I am hoping to kind of taper down in the last couple of months of the year, just kind of do a bit of a reset, kind of take my breath. It's been a very busy and exciting year, honestly. So I'm looking to do that. I review my goals at least quarterly. I've got a tight-knit mastermind group that I work with, and we go through and review our goals and kind of hold each other accountable. So I found that to be really helpful. And part of one of my goals is to kind of slow down a little bit. But
yeah, you need to. Everybody, quality of life. That's what I tell people. It's quality of life, not quantity.
Exactly.
I love high quality life. Well, Brian, I really do appreciate your time. Is there anything else? Is there anything that we didn't get to touch on that you want to touch on?
I don't think so. You asked some really, really good questions, so I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, you provided some good info. So, as a person who's not a technologist, I definitely appreciate it. But, you're helping me, with that space. And like I said, I've had some experience with dealing with other people, but I can definitely tell you're passionate about what you're doing. And I look forward to, following up, later on and seeing what you've been able to do and seeing if you get any more patents. I'm like, that's exciting that you've been able to apply and get those. So congratulations on that.
No, thank you. I appreciate it.
Моих братьев благослови наши руки, мы в поисках больших денег, мы в деле круглые сутки, благослови.
Radio show, man, they everywhere.